focus a little bit more on the project planning or on the Gantt chart. So here I'm gonna actually stop sharing and I'm gonna give it off to our special guest speaker, Ren, and she'll go through these slides.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much for letting me briefly introduce this topic, because I can tell you as an engineer at Boeing, project planning is one of the most important skills that I have seen in my colleagues as well as new employees at my company. It's something that if you don't start with something like this, your project can go amiss very quickly. And it takes a lot more time and resources to get your project back on plan if you don't start off strong. So thank you again. Thank you, Davin, for letting me begin this conversation. All right. So with any talk, I love to start off with discussing, why does this matter? Why should I care? Why should I invest my time and energy in talking about this? And I suspect as teachers, maybe some or more, many of you have experienced situations that look like this, where perhaps you're overloaded, perhaps something like this, where you're mopping the floor and the tap is still running on the sink and we're grabbing all the mops instead of trying to turn off the tap. Or maybe even perhaps worst of all, I think something like this, where everything is burning and everyone's just like, all right, this is okay. And if any of you, I can't see your screen, but if any of you are laughing at this, as I did when I was building this presentation, I have a strong suspicion that you already understand why effective project planning is extremely important. And it's because we don't want to go through a situation like this, nor do we want our students or colleagues to experience the terrible situations that end up where you're feeling something like what you see on your screen right now. So now that we talked about why does it matter, I like to talk about, it's kind of funny that Davin brought up Thomas Edison, because for me, I was looking at some of his quotes for work. And, you know, if you don't take my word for it with those pictures, because I have experienced every single one of them, I suspect you'll take his word for it, because he's accomplished so much as an entrepreneur and as a scientist. And if you look at that quote, he says it right there. You know, if you're busy, it doesn't mean you're accomplishing anything, but you need all of these items to successfully get things done. And planning is one of them. All right. So we've talked about why does it matter. Let's talk about what is project planning. From my perspective, from a simplified approach, you know, when you're starting any project, at least in the industry, you start off with a limited amount of resources, right? Whether it's time, money, labor, material, supplies, or tools, right? You start off with a finite amount of resources. And that tends to drive the need for managing projects effectively. And again, that includes stuff like project planning, risk mitigation, tracking, reporting, accountability, and performance for your team to make sure that you accomplish everything that you set out to do from the beginning. And that all, like I mentioned before, that all starts off with an effective project plan. And it's basically your roadmap to success. On a high level, a project plan, at least from my perspective, contains four main things. What are we doing? When do we need to do it? Who's going to do it? And are there any interdependencies or relationships between each of these tasks that will impact our schedule and how we get things done? So I think with that said, we'll move on to, okay, we talked about why, what, and now we're going to talk about how. How do we do it? And as Davin mentioned, there are a ton of project planning tools that you can use. And you can see the list on here, Gantt chart being one of them. I use it all the time. You've got CPM, PERT, and PDM, and more, right? But I think, Davin, I might hand the ball back over to you, because I think we're going to deep dive the Gantt chart next.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ren. That was awesome. Okay, so let me just share back my screen here. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with the Gantt chart, but it's okay if you're not. We're gonna kind of dissect this a little bit more. If you received your pre-session packet, there is a copy of the engineering notebook that we will use today. We won't use the Gantt chart in the activity today, but if you refer to page 7 in the notebook, you'll see this this graphical representation that I'm showing here on the screen. Or you can just kind of just watch the Zoom. But here is a definition that we found on the Arizona K-12 STEM education website. And it's written for educators, so we thought this was a great definition of a Gantt chart. But a Gantt chart is a project management tool often used outside of education that can be easily incorporated into curriculum mapping, event planning, and other areas. It's a way to visualize the task associated with a project and see what items must be completed on a specific day. It also allows you to quickly see the start and end dates for your project. So what does that look like actually? So this is an example of what the definition kind of defines here. So you see in the green here we do have the start and end date. And, Ren could explain, a lot why that's important. You don't want to miss a customer delivery date, for example. Even one day can be catastrophic for a customer delay. And also in the detail part green, I think Ren mentioned, when things are due. So these are the task due dates. And so, so it's important to understand because, one task could be dependent on the next. And so you may not want to be holding up another task or somebody else. I think Ren mentioned the responsibility. So that's the person. So in here in orange, it could be an individual or it could be a team of students. Of course, if this is an individual project, it'll all be that one person. But if you have a team working on it, 2 or 3 people could be working on a task as well. And then also the main thing is really defining, each task, clearly. So the task should be able, when you read it, to understand that when it's done, then that task is done. So defining the problem statement. So if it's done, then okay, then the problem statement is defined. So it should be very, very clear. And that's pretty much the basic guts of a Gantt chart. Now, Ren mentioned a whole lot of different types of project management tools, and it can get more detailed and more complicated. But I think this is the basic components. And I'm assuming that as teachers, when you guys do your planning for the year, I'm pretty sure you have you're already creating sort of a Gantt chart, or you are creating a Gantt chart, right? Of when you need to kind of plan your quarters or semesters or even days, right? So I think we all have a little project management inside us. And how is this important for students? It develops soft skills, and I think I will go into that a little later in my next slide. So any questions here? Or Clyde, Ren, did you want to add something else to this? Just unmute if you wanted to add, or if anyone has any questions. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Hey, Davin, do you want to share your other screen? Even though we love seeing the next slide, but we see the presenter view right now.
Oh, huh? Oh, wait, what am I? Oh, okay. Wait. Oh, okay, this one.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay. Yay. Got it. Thank you. But anyone else has any questions? Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Okay, let's see. So yeah, as I was kind of going into it, here are some benefits and skills. I know there was a question, that in the engineering design process, what this might be useful for you. If you're not teaching science, I think soft skills, you can learn a lot from the engineering design process, especially focusing on the project planning or the Gantt chart. It promotes leadership and accountability. So as you saw that each task has a responsibility or a person that's responsible for. And if you don't finish, then you may hold up the next person in line. So that's where, where the leadership or accountability comes in. And then also the self-responsibility to complete your own task or to make sure that your team completes the task on time. Planning and due dates kind of set goals for students, you know, to have a target date that they need to complete. I think that's also very important. And learning to work in teams. I think this is a project, so this is a great soft skills on communications and communicating with each other. And you know, you learn a lot. So even though if you have a team where some people may not work well together, well, that's building some soft skills in itself. Yeah, and I think it's a learning lesson. And so I think that's also good to you know, understand how to work with other people. And then also breaking down tasks. This is very difficult even for guys like me who's been doing it for years, is to, you know, clearly breaking down the tasks so everybody understands, you know, what the goal is in mind for each, you know, each task in the project plan. And it's also a good way to do reporting. So your students can come to you to report, you know, where they are in their project by schedule, and do they see any bottlenecks or issues or risks. Oh, and then so I forgot to mention that in the before task, yeah, identifying key milestones in a project. So you know, prototype completed, or you know, iterate or testing completed, or anything that you feel as a teacher that's very important to highlight. Setting milestones is also very important as well. So here are some samples of some Gantt charts. So I'm gonna maybe ask one of our participants to share. But before I do, you know, these are some examples from a grade 6 teacher on the top left from Ben Parker. This is how she used the Gantt chart. And then on the right-hand side, this is an example that Kelly Asato has used with her students at Kahalu Elementary. But Kelly, if you're on and if you can unmute, would you mind kind of sharing, like, you know, how you kind of, you know, developed this Gantt chart, how you used it, and, you know, any lessons learned or observation from your students?
Sure. I based this off of the model we had before, and I wanted to make sure it was more of a to-do list to make sure we hit each main component that we needed to do for the week. And I gave it a week just because you never know what's going to happen within the week. So it's kind of flexible that we can kind of maneuver things within that week. And then I also put certain subject areas where we will hone in on certain skills. So I know during science, we're going to watch these videos. We're going to review vocabulary during science. During reading for the ask, this is just for week 1, an example. During reading, we're going to build up our background, and we're going to hone in on the main topic, RI 2.2. You know, I just put in a standard in there so that they know this all connects to the bigger picture. Even though we're doing components in separate areas and separate subjects, they all kind of combine to end off with a finished product at the end of the month. So my Gantt chart is kind of scaffolded within the subject areas as well as within the weeks. And then I kind of added math in there too, especially with the 2-digit subtraction and addition. We're going to hone in on that because that's a problem, but that's going to relate to cost and purchases with our project. So, yeah, so I just wanted to them to see that this is our to-do list. We can check it off and how it all relates to the bigger picture.
Okay, yeah, it's great. And so were the students engaged? Like, were they also kind of looking at it, following it, and kind of looking forward to, you know, the next day or the next week?
Yeah, it was, yeah, they look forward to it. Definitely it was guided because they're so young. I think I could improve this with pictures so that they don't have to look at all the words. So I don't know if they could read it all either. So yeah, I think pictures for them would have been better. I can read this, but yeah, I think I would shorten it to improve upon this, but to shorten it and then put a picture so they know, oh, picture, okay, this word, and she'll explain if I can't read it. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this is great, because I think I know we have April, right? It was Laura L as well. And so, you know, maybe this can be a baseline if you also wanted to use a Gantt chart. Any other comments or questions or anything else? Clyde, you want to add, or Sherry, or anyone? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to here just some suggestions. I have some bullets on the bottom left here, and I think Kelly, I think you kind of hit it on the spot that perhaps for the lower L, I think teachers need to heavily guide the task and due dates. And as I guess, as you progress to the higher grades, it can be less guided. Another example that we've seen in the past is that emojis can be used to represent certain things in a Gantt chart. So we've seen them like if they're on time or late. So you could put a happy face for like on time or completed, or frowny face for something that's going to be late, so you could kind of make it fun. And I think, Kelly, that's where you're going at. You said you want to add more graphics to make it to more lighten. Maybe for the upper secondary, more of the one that I showed before, where you can assign students so they can take ownership of the tasks and due dates, or you assign team of students. And I think the bottom bullet is for any grade, tasks can be completed by an individual or teams. And that all that means is that, some projects may be individual projects. So we've seen, a lot of science fair projects where there's only one person. So in that case, all the tasks will be done by that one student. But I've also seen projects or even science fair projects that are done by a team, 3 students. So then you can divvy up the tasks, or all 3 can focus on a task. So these are just some suggestions. The next slide, actually, we're gonna just have some some discussions. Kind of want to hear from you guys.
Oh,
yeah, Sherry.
Devin, I wanted to add something.
Yes.
I like the approaches of both teachers. I know the 6th grade example and the of course with Kelly's the grade 2. But what I want to ask is, maybe for Kelly or maybe for other teachers, have you actually, maybe you didn't call it a Gantt chart in your classroom, but when you've had bigger projects, have you often put a chart on the board or on chart paper to kind of have a visual for students to refer to during that span of the project, so they can see this visual, if it's like a bar Gantt chart, or something larger and on the board? Because I've seen that before. Has anybody else done something like that before? Maybe not call it a Gantt chart. I don't know. And I think I see Audrey says yes. Okay. Anybody else want to share? I mean, or maybe you can share, talk. Even with a planner, I know with upper elementary maybe and middle high school, do students normally have planners? Some kind of organization skill, but maybe that'll come in the next slide. So I'll stop there.
No, thanks, Sherry. Yeah.
In my class, we tracked the math progress. It was not associated with the STEM or science, but with the math progress, I put a chart, like a scoreboard type of thing, to track how many people accomplish how many things. It tracks a frequency, how many times you achieved your goal, and I put a check mark there. It's type of chart, and the kids often they go back to look, and if I forgot to mark their charts, they'll be reminding me. I earned one yesterday, forgot to put it up there. So yeah, that was something interesting, and they take it seriously.
Yeah, thank you, Meng Zhao, for sharing. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so this is just some maybe discussion amongst all of us, is that follow up to what Sherry was saying, is that what are some of the challenges faced by students in project planning, in particular developing a Gantt chart. Anybody want to share? Or Kelly, I know you've been working with students. Yeah, do you see any challenges faced by your students?
I think as a whole, just scheduling is hard. There's always things that pop up here and there, especially I think in elementary schools or just in our school, that stops us from meeting our goals in time. So we have to be very flexible about 1 week could turn into 2 weeks. And sometimes even an EDP project can take the whole quarter. So it's really, it's really kind of tough sometimes to stick to the plan, but the plan just gets lengthened, that's all. But they enjoy knowing their end goal. Sorry, there's something happening.
So, how about Audrey?
Yeah, I have some. Yeah, one problem the groups always had was that 2 people would be missing or absent often, and they had an assigned task. So then there was no one to do their task, and so then they were having to come after school to do that person's job because that person wasn't there. So that was a big problem. And I don't see how to solve that because you can't control what students you get in your classroom. So it's basically like, yeah, I know that probably it's just going to end up being 2 people in your group because 2 might disappear most of the quarter. So, but hopefully the 2 of you can, are up to the challenge. But I noticed that the ones that they usually were able to still accomplish the task, but it's just a lot of weight put on them. And they would record they would put down that person was absent, and then they would write their name and that they were the ones that did the task. And I have a giant chart on the wall, so they go and they write everything in there. So they can see not just what their group is doing, but what all the groups are doing and where they are. So they can compare, and it ups the competition between each group because each group wants to be the first to finish. So that works also. But yeah, I think absenteeism is the biggest problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Audrey, for sharing. Yeah, that is a difficult challenge. So Deborah chatted, it seems to me that there's a need to be a structure for teacher conferences on team progress to refine the process. Yeah. Did you want to add more to that, Deborah?
Well, this is a real opportunity for teachers to check in while students are working on their teams, make sure that the teacher has a time to confer with each group and see how they're doing and how they're filling out their charts and doing their notebooks, and just kind of do so that the check-ins are gradual and not at the end, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that, for the teacher to chart what's going on with each team.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point.
Yeah, I want to, Deborah, I really like that. That is a good point, building that in. Sometimes, when you create the Gantt chart, it can be very, it seems rigid, but like as Kelly had shared that, you need to be flexible as well. And I don't know about the real world with engineers, and if you have a deadline, is it a hard deadline? But understanding that, in the classroom, there needs to be this kind of flexibility, but also building in that time for groups to work, but also time for the teacher to check on the groups. That's excellent. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely, Audrey.
Yeah, because usually for my groups, I check their Gantt charts every day. So their team leader brings me the Gantt chart, and then they show it to me, and then I check it, and they explain to me why they're not on target or what happened. And then I do that with them every day. It's not just because it's middle school and I know a lot of things can happen, but every day I would check their chart. So they can't, at the beginning of the class, they bring me their chart, they show it to me. This is what we're doing. This is what we plan to finish by the end of the period. And then if they don't, then the next day they explain to me what happened and why they didn't. So I'm always on watching their progress daily, not I don't put it off because, yeah, like you said, if you don't keep an eye on their progress, they'll get way behind. And then it's going to be like, for some of them, it'll be impossible to catch up.
Yeah. So that's great, Audrey, because you're trying to build the accountability soft skill in them, right? Slowly.
Yeah.
Hopefully, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So I have another bullet here. So what do you guys think? How do you build these planning and management skills from an early age? How would you present, or how would you teach this in the classroom?
I was a kindergarten teacher last year before they put me back in middle school.
Oh, okay.
And so I can see, as a kindergarten teacher, it would not really be a turning them loose. It would be a guiding. It would be, okay, your group is here together. You're going to do this, and you're going to put it in your notebook, and you're going to, and with models and charts to show them, here's what we're doing, here's how you do it. I mean, it would be very, very scaffold to do a little project like this, and to teach them how to be a team. And first, I mean, for me, from my previous middle school background, the working on cooperative groups, teaching them the different roles, what each role needs to do. Each of you has a recorder, each of you has a facilitator, each of you has a whatever, your timekeeper or chart keeper, and teaching them about the roles, teaching them about their notebooks. I mean, it would ideally be something that you could structure from kindergarten to first to second, so that you started in kindergarten and you moved it up. Those kinds of spiraling curriculums seem to work well, but that would take a team that took that to heart and wanted that process.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Randy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how about you at the middle school? You're at Ilima. At that age, how would you start building these planning and management skills, or how do you do it?
Well, I think that's a great question for all of us, right? When we think about things, how do we build these type of skills for our students, because these are like basically soft skills that they need for any type of job or profession.
That's right.
So I know that a lot of students that are coming at the 8th grade level lack these specific skills. So I guess going back to what Kelly presented about even scaffolding the steps, and also what Deborah mentioned, I think that's very important if they're lacking those specific skills, and start with the basic foundations. And then gradually, and one thing with the 8th grade perspective for science is that we have the HSA science assessments that were boggled down. So part of my responsibility for the next coming year is basically how can we better manage our time, but also how do we group specific NGSS standards to create opportunities for the students to actually use like the Gantt chart and planning process. But also we have to guide them, because at that age, you can't just set them loose, because middle school students are going to just do what they want to do. So it's still a work in progress for me, because you're working with a group of students, group of teachers within your grade level. Planning is very important. So as right now, I'm still learning with the rest of you guys.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think it's I think everyone has similar challenges, and we're all going through the same thing. Okay. Anyone else has anything to share? Like maybe Micah or April?
I have a question. When you're talking about the NGSS, the new standards, do they address this? The recording, are those part of the curriculum standards that they want you to work on, is how to chart, record your research and your work?
Sherry, you want to help us answer this? You're an NGSS expert.
Oh, not an expert, but yes, definitely. If you look at how it's three-dimensional with the NGSS, and so it's not it's very integrated. So the science and engineering practices. So there's also a science and engineering their mindsets of like what is it an engineer's mindset, a scientist mindset. But those science and engineering practices, which is that left blue column on your NGSS documents, that specifically has things like communication, collaboration. And if you look at the NGSS also integrates the math and English language arts as well too. So the communication piece is actually in there, connections too. So you can see that as well. It's actually built in how to present, how to work in teams, collaboration. That's actually the ELA components as well, the soft skills. And the observational skills, conducting research, all of those things are actually built in and integrated into the content standards as well too. So yes. Yeah. Hope that answers. And what Davin is bringing you back to right now, the slide, that's it. There are the 8 SEPs, science and engineering practices. So if you look at that, you can see the planning and carrying out investigations as well too. So the engineering design process is a process, right? So it is practice, and you have that mindset of an engineer, which is appropriate for all ages and everyone, all of us in everyday life as well too. So if you look at these, I think all of you had said that as well too. So yeah.
So thank you, Deborah, for bringing it up. Did that help at least answer your question, or?
I hope I didn't make it worse.
Yeah, and Clyde might have mentioned this, but if not, the engineering notebook that you have that will be used today actually addresses all 8 of these, and that's why we had this on as a individual slide here. So the notebook is a very powerful tool for NGSS, but also for communication as well. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna find where I lost that.
Gavin?
Yes.
I just wanted to add, like the beauty of this STEM program and people starting from kindergarten through high school is that the kids are starting to build those soft skills. And like my daughter is in high school right now. She really doesn't have those soft skills. She's like, so like I'm seeing her in her STEM class right now, and she didn't have any of this coming up through elementary school. So she's like building it, but I can see that the kids at school have already established some of these things. So like, hopefully, and I think that's the whole idea of the STEM Pre-Academy and everything, is that when they get to high school, when they get to college, they will have those soft skills. Right. And that's the beauty of it starting in kindergarten, where you're, and building from year to year to year.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you. Can I add to that real quick?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I thought that was a really great observation. I think that was, I saw Meg made that observation. Yeah. It's funny because when you were talking about, I think your question, your first or second question was, how do we do this in school, right? And how do we build these soft skills at an early age? And as I was listening to the questions that were being asked and the responses that you all gave, I'm looking at it from, a working level perspective. And the answer that I hear is you're already doing it. The way that I think about it, at least from what I've heard so far, is, if you go through from elementary school to middle school to high school, it sounds like the way that you're starting to teach these kids this progression of the thought process and the soft skills for project planning and project management. It's almost like, in my mind, it's like a level of delegation, right? So like when you've got elementary school kids, it's like you have a new hire. And as the person's leader, as their boss, you're going to provide a lot of guidance. It's going to be very high level. You're going to start simple, right? And just teach the concepts. And as you go along, as they get more experience, they get more knowledge, you go to middle school and high school, you can start delegating all of those tasks little by little to the students, because they're building that knowledge, they're building that skill. And by the time you get to high school, you've already got the toolkit. And I think ideally by the time they decide to go to school or to a higher education, they can take the ball and run with it, because you've already given them everything that they need to do it on their own. And I think that progression, the way that, and I took some notes here, because I know Kelly mentioned that Gantt chart that she used with her students. And I think I remember you said you were an elementary school teacher, right? Yeah, young
Yes.
kids.
Grade
Yeah,
2.
and I'm so impressed by that, because you mentioned your concern is schedule sliding, right? Or things need to be flexible because things change, right? And I think Audrey mentioned that absences, people not showing up, that those are challenges that you face. And I try not to smile too big, because those are real problems that I deal with every day at work. I'm sure as teachers, maybe you guys feel that way too, if you have to pick up the slack or someone, I'm not sure how it goes for you guys, but I completely identify with that. And what I think that the upside to dealing with those situations at an early age with the kids is that those are real life situations. And I think when you're prepared, when you're given small opportunities at a young age to try and fail, or the way that I call it, it's try and learn, right? Or try and grow. When you get those opportunities early, it prevents someone who, like me, maybe 32, 35, whatever, right, from being afraid of failing. And when you have those opportunities to learn that early and get exposed to those real life situations at a low risk level, you're preparing them to be resilient when they get to the workplace. And in my opinion, there's a lot of folks that I've met that haven't had that opportunity. And so I loved hearing what you said, because I think those struggles in itself is an opportunity to learn, because that to me is project management. Like, you can have the best plan, but something is going to happen. You're always going to go to plan B, C, or D. And they're learning at an early age what reality is like, and building that resilience to go, all right, we're in trouble. Do I need to ask my teacher for help? When do I need to raise my hand? Or, do I need more resources? And, that thought process is something that is hard to teach when you're an adult. Believe me, I've tried. But if it starts when you're young, it's amazing to see how much more proficient you are when you go into the workplace. So I'm so stoked. I love hearing all of this. And just another perspective to looking at it, right? And I think as teachers, at least it's been a while since I've been back in school, so forgive me. But, in my experience, from what I remember, getting that guidance, getting that mentorship when things go wrong, and knowing that it's okay when things don't go the way you planned. What matters is, what do we do now? How do we react, and how do we change, and how do I get to where I need to go? I think that mentality, that resilience, is also invaluable, because it's hard to teach that when you're an adult and when things are high stake, right? Anyway, I'll stop talking. I'm just so excited.
No, thank you.
Can I validate what Ren is saying?
Absolutely.
And appreciate that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would love for our faculty at Kaneohe to just hear Ren's excitement over this process. And I want to share that I'm watching our little ones from the primary grade levels learn that they're getting that mindset, and that those paradigms of it's okay to make a mistake, it's okay to fail, because we can always improve. And that wording is being shared, so the children are beginning to explain it in that way. But the thing that, and as I'm listening to Ren, and we talk about, how she was saying, it's hard to teach that. the way that people learn that, especially as we're coming through the system, is you experience it, and then it becomes validated through the discussion and the iterations over and over, where we have the little ones saying it's okay to fail. And I think that it would be so encouraging for our teachers to hear it from the industry, to hear some, like even when we listen to the Dean, Brennan Morioka at UH College of Engineering, saying he recognizes the soft skills that he wants to see more of at the university level, and saying that, it's not just reaching out to the secondary schools, it's reaching all the way down to the formative years. And it's validating the teachers from elementary and up on this process, allowing the children to experience this kind of resilience, the need for resilience, and the need for, that it's all right to continue to improve. Because I think a lot of our lessons and the curriculum didn't lend itself to that before. There was a right answer and you got it or you didn't get it. So this entire EDP experience is more than just science and engineering. It just incorporates so many life skills that the kids definitely need. So.
Well, thank you, Karen, for sharing, and Ren as well, and Meg. Awesome observation. I think it's kind of reassuring to hear from us as STEM Pre Academy and PAF, right, sharing, Karen, that you see that there is some sort of impact going on. Comparing your daughter to what you're seeing with your students. Thank you for sharing that observation. That is great, and thank you all, teachers. Yes.
Gavin,
yeah.
I have a little story that I think goes along with this really well. I was a career development facilitator for 6 years in Greenville, South Carolina, which is the center of the BMW industry. They build BMWs there, and so all around in the counties, there are supporting manufacturing that goes along with producing the upholstery, producing the pedals, blah blah, whatever. And we had occasion to do a lot of road trips, field trips, to visit these different places. And we went to one time, and there was a little manufacturing facility that was developing a computer that could go from 50 below to 110 for military. They were developing a process. And the most incredible thing that he said was they had learned that they were no longer hiring the smartest, the top, the ones that had been valedictorians and that had just blown the top off of everything, because when they came into work, they did not know how to work in a team. They were so egocentric that they didn't know how to be part and to have their ideas questioned and those. So they said, now we're looking at the second tier, the ones that did really well, but were not blowing the top off of everything. And I thought that was so interesting. It was like probably 10 years ago now, but I just thought it was a real interesting testament to learning the soft skills.
Yeah. That's a great story, because I think we hear the same thing from local businesses as well, is that I think the communication, I think Cheryl can chime in on this, but I think even our UH College of Engineering faculty also say some similar thing, is I think it's really the soft skills that are that are lacking. Ren, did you want to add something else, or anybody?
Yeah, I totally agree. Without telling you 80 million different stories, I'll keep it short. you know, the way that I describe it to my team right now is high functioning, and it's almost like we're family. It's amazing. It's amazing environment to work in, and I'm very lucky. And what I tell them is, you know, you can be the smartest person in the world. You can have the most experience and have the most degrees and education, but at the end of the day, where we work, if you can't communicate, if you don't have those soft skills, if you can't work in a team, if you can't efficiently, you know, do what's needed to be done to get things done, no one's going to want to work with you, and you're never going to accomplish anything. So you can be the smartest person in the room, but if no one wants to work with you, or if no one can work with you, it makes it very, very difficult to get a team on the right track to success. So I completely resonate with that. I think it's still relevant today from what I've seen, not just in my company, but outside and also in school. I 100 million % agree with that observation.
All right, this was a great discussion, but we do have an activity waiting. You know, if there's other topics, or you could probably put in a comment. Thank you, Ren, for that, your story as well, because I think this is a very important topic, and I hope you realize that now, that, you know, EDP is not just a mechanical process, but, you know, there's a lot of soft skills intertwined. It's not just a science content. Meg, as an art teacher, you know how valuable you are to this process, and the art and the sketching as well. This is a great you know, tool to teach students, you know, a lot of things: the science, the soft skills, everything cross cuts all the contents. I'll just briefly go to the next slide. Before I came to UH, I have an engineering background, and I worked in international, I worked in Japan, and I was a program manager out there working on global projects. And I just wanted to emphasize that how the Gantt chart was used in industry, and then I'll also have Ren share her experience at Boeing. But you know, the main thing that we've been saying is communication. So whether you speak Japanese, Chinese, Dutch, or German, or English, a schedule is a schedule. You know, March 3rd, 2021, everybody understands that. And so it's a great tool, you know, to be a common language amongst multiple countries and languages. That's how it was used as I was running a global project. And it's also a great tool for resource management in the industry, meaning that, you know, a particular engineer may work on 5-10 different projects, and we want to make sure that we don't overload that engineer. And so it is a tool that you can see if a particular person or particular team may get too much on their plate, and then you can kind of balance it out. It's also a tool to do supply chain management. You know, Boeing builds a plane, but they have a lot of suppliers, so it's a tool. You know, if one part doesn't come in on time, it may hold up the whole production, and you know, you may not want that. And the company that I worked for was a manufacturing company, so getting parts in time was very critical for us. And if it didn't come in, then we could be late in delivering our overall product. You can also identify risks, so it can be a good risk management tool. So many people address, like Audrey, you address some team members may not be coming to school or doing the work. So you may need to think about adding additional resources, or perhaps maybe adding more time. I think, Kelly, you addressed the issue of time. So, you know, you can put time in the schedule. Project management terms, we maybe call it like crashing the schedule, where, you know, if something comes up, your principal says you got to go do this. Well, you know, you have to kind of put that into the schedule, and, you know, so modify it. So it's a good risk management tool. Also for reporting a project prioritization, you know, certain projects may be more of a higher priority. So that'll, you know, make your engineers work on this project versus another, or your team. So that's, you know, just a little bit of some industry, like how this can be used. So it's not just, you know, for middle school, elementary, high school. Yeah, these actually skills or this Gantt chart, we actually use these terms out in industry, and they can be very useful. You know, even if they don't become a project manager, but if they work on a project, it's good to understand, you know, how a project schedule is laid out. Ren, you have anything else you want to add from your experience?
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind going to the next slide, I'm gonna circle back.
You want me to give you the rights?
Actually, if you don't mind, I can just tell.
Sure.
I think there's only 2 animations.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, I'll go back.
All right, so, and I can start talking. So going back, you know, this hopefully looks familiar to you because I brought it up in the beginning of this session. Going back to Thomas Edison's quote, right? About the objective of work is to accomplish something, and that planning is an important piece of it. One thing I left out in that beginning talk is if you click the next, or if you click the button, from an industry standpoint, he also mentions that accomplishment, getting things done, is also, you know, the end goal, right? And so what you see here is, you know, project planning is the beginning, and it's a means to an end, right? You project plan, you project manage, and then ideally you finish the project on time, on schedule, on budget. Maybe that's idealism world, but in theory, that's the goal. And so to bring it back full circle, right? You know, from an industry perspective, project planning matters because it helps you get to where you need to go. And again, it leads to effective project management and efficient project closure. So I could give you, if you have questions later, I could give you a ton of examples, but for me, I wanted to bring it back to, from an industry perspective for project planning, it's so critical because it gets you to where you need to go with it. And thanks, Devin.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Ren. Yeah, any questions? Because we're going to take a break next. But anybody have any questions before we do that? This is a great discussion, by the way. This is awesome. Anybody else wanted to add something? Yeah. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take at least a 10-minute break. I just want to mention that everyone, you do have your pre-session packet. And I think one of the things that we asked before we started the workshop today was if you could, you know, find that space where you would do the testing and lay out all the string for the measurement. You know, if you want to do that now, you know, you can do that during this break, but hopefully you've already have that set up. If you don't have I guess a place where you have at least 10 feet, let me know, because then we might have to readjust some of the scores. We will tell you there are certain places in the notebook that we had to change, mainly the scoring and the rubric. So we'll get to that, and then I'll also probably put that in the chat. So yeah, you may need to just kind of modify your notebook on that. Okay, so yeah, so if you have any issues with the pre-session stuff, I'll stay online. You can chat me. But if not, we'll see you back in 10 minutes. So it's 9:44. So I guess 9:54 then. Yeah, we'll come back. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Devin, I had a question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On the
yes.
Flight stuff. Were we supposed to measure where the nose landed, or because there wasn't a marking on the plane, so I didn't know if it was like the middle of the plane or the nose.
Yeah. Nose. Clyde.
That's what I did. Okay.
Yeah, I think Clyde, that's right? Nose, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's nose.
Okay.
Because that would be the furthest point. Yeah, would be the nose. Yeah. Thank you. It's a great question.
Okay.
Devin, I think I did check with you. You know, the flight path, this 15-foot length and the width.
Yeah.
Is in a different room from my computer.
Okay.
And so it's not like, so, I mean, I'm assuming we're going to be doing some flying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's okay, right? Because it's going to be.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I would have liked to see you fly the plane, but it's okay. if you can point the camera that way. But if it's in a totally different room, then yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just have to yell loud, so in case we need you back at your computer then. Okay, all right.